Hello and welcome in to the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast. I am JP and I'll be your host, joined as always by Elijah here. And how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good. In case you didn't notice, something changed about my face. Uh,
Yeah, man, I
maybe,
was shocked.
yeah, it's shaved my beard for my major, musical theater. Wanted to look younger for a part, but yeah, I'm still getting used to my own face. It's been about a year and a half, and I've never seen this much of my lower face before.
Well, if you're going for looking younger, then it worked because you look like a baby.
Yeah, I don't know how much I like it.
Yeah, it's just weird to see your chin, but you look good. You look good.
Yeah, I gotta do some face exercises. My face looks pudgier like this. Yeah.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah. All
All
right.
right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We are going to be talking about our top 12 consensus wide receivers, and I'm excited for this.
Mhm.
And we're going to kick it off with a little bit of a controversial ranking here. Number one, we have Devontae Adams. And most people, they're expecting Michael Thomas, but we had Devontae Adams number one this year. And in 2018, he was the number one receiver. So we know it's very well possible, for him to be the number one receiver. We've seen him do it. And he's the only proven receiver on his team, really. We always joke about how the Packers draft was just not good because they needed a second wide receiver for the team, and they didn't get one. With how many receivers? I think there's 36 receivers drafted, and you don't take a one. So Devonta Adams is going to be the clear number one target again. Jimmy Graham is even gone now. He was kind of looked like a corpse out there last season. I don't know why they kept throwing him the ball, but they did. But that opens up even more targets for Devonta Adams. And he did get injured last season, but from the point he returned on, he was wide receiver four. So he had a pretty good season, and he got off to a slow start. And I think a lot of that was due to it being a new system for him to learn. Mike McCarthy was gone. He had Matt LaFleur, and it looked like he had a better handle of the offense and upon returning from the injury. And yeah, he's my personal number one receiver as well as yours.
Yeah, I put him number one. Side note, I think you look more and more triggered every time you talk about the Packers draft. So it is pretty upsetting. I'll agree with that. But anyways, adding on to him being the only wide receiver, it looks like the Packers having Aaron Rodgers even aging, or I don't know what they're doing, but they seem to be going more towards a run first offense. They just drafted another running back, and now they seem to want to be more slow the clock type team, passing when precise, more like the Seahawks. And so that's going
Mm-hmm.
to take away from his production. They beefed up their defense last year, so it was less targets where Devontae Adams still did really well last year, and I think even more he's going to either get the same or even less again, even still being number one wide receiver one.
Yeah, and a lot of the reason why we have Devontae Adams number one is, like we said, he's like the only proven receiver on his team. He's going to get a large target share. But
Mhm.
we have Michael Thomas, number two, and he is Emmanuel Sanders in town now, right? I don't think he's going to have quite as many targets. He had a record-breaking season. Don't get me wrong; he's a fantastic receiver. But when people have these record-breaking seasons, they don't tend to repeat the next year. I mean, I think he broke the record for receptions by like 8. It wasn't marginally. It was a pretty good amount there. But there's just a lot of weapons there. You have Alvin Kamara, Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook had a good season last year. And yeah, I just don't think he's going to be the number one receiver. I still know he's going to be a great, safe wide receiver. But number two, that's where we have him now. I just don't expect him to finish number one, you know,
Yeah,
again.
yeah. I think the margin between number one and number two is definitely like the smallest margin, like basically on any list. But it's basically Emmanuel Sanders just taking away a bulk where they actually got a wide receiver to pass to and a proven wide receiver in his own. And I truly hope that they actually use him a good amount, and so they don't just know that they're going to pass to Michael Thomas every time. And again, yeah, they've had their weapons in Kamara and Cook now, and Cook's he's up there in age, but he's still having great years. I mean, he could be having a decline soon. Yeah, I think maybe he declined a little bit, but he still was able to hold his own. And I mean, Michael Thomas is an amazing wide receiver, no doubt about it. I mean, I think he led in receptions the past 2 years, so he could easily do that again. But it's just um, with the team, one added a wide receiver too, one didn't.
Yeah, this is looking like one of the most well balanced, just strong offenses is the way I would describe it. Because I mean, they got a great running game. They use Murray and Alvin Kamara, and they both did well. And of course, they're very effective through the air. So I expect this team to be a very good team in the in the hunt there for a top two seed. Honestly, in the NFC,
Yeah,
that's the way I feel about the team.
yeah, they've been the Saints have been Super Bowl or die for like 4 years now. It's just like Drew Brees is in his prime. Let's get something going. So they're beefing that offense every year they can, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah, and there's lots of whispers that this is potentially Drew Brees' last season. That's what a lot of people are speculating. So they're gonna have to go all in, and they're doing that with adding Michael Thomas. So we'll see if they can actually win games in the playoffs this year,
Yeah,
because I very well expect them to be there. But moving on to number three, we have here. I personally have Julio Jones number three, and that is where he is for us too.
yeah.
Julio Jones is he's just been one of the most consistent wide receivers. He was wide receiver three last year, and he never had a game with less than 7 targets last year. So that just shows he has the consistent volume to be that option that gets points every single week. You can rely on that's not going to bust.
Hmm.
But barring injury, like he might be one of the draft safest receiver because, like I said, he's always up there. I mean, of course, Michael Thomas, I might put number one as the safest, but Julio Jones, that's what you're getting from him. You're getting that safety, and he's on a high-powered offense that gets a large target share with a great quarterback. I mean, I think this offense is going to put up a lot of points, and Julio Jones is going to be the number one target.
Yeah, I had Julio Jones actually at number six, but number not number six, number five, and again, it's very close between all those. But for my arguments on Julio, I think Matt Ryan will have his up year, like you said. It's just a weird science there that's happening with him, and I just something we talked about is with the other people. I think you'll just get more touchdowns, and Julio just doesn't get those touchdowns. And with fantasy, uh, touchdowns mean everything. And for me, that just dropped him a little bit, but very close to everyone else. And averaging out, I can see easily number three to anywhere in there.
Yeah, if he
Yeah,
always gets those receptions and those yards every single year, year in and year out, but if he somehow finally got a big touchdown season in the double digits, then he could very well be in the running for the number one receiver.
that's true. Yeah.
All right, well, moving on to number four, we have DeAndre Hopkins, now an Arizona Cardinal, and I personally had him at five, the way you had Julio Jones, but he's been a top five receiver 3 seasons in a row. So, like I said with Julio Jones, he's also a very safe option. But of course, he changed teams. He has to learn a new system, and I think he's going to get a little bit less volume, but I think he will be a little bit more efficient. I think the offense is going to be a little bit better because I think Cliff Kingsbury, the way he runs that offense, is he uses the weapons very well. But since he spreads the ball a little more than Kyler Murray, that's why I say I don't think he'll have quite as many targets. And that's personally why I have him fifth out of those top five great options because really we're talking about five options that are usually ranked in that top five. There's not really much. People might flip Hopkins and Jones and Adams, but wouldn't you agree that there's five really strong receivers this year?
Yeah, I mean, from one to five, you could have them in any order, and that could like 100% be possible that that's how it's going to finish in the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. For DeAndre Hopkins specifically, I had him above Julio Jones. Again, with my touchdown reasoning, I think if he's going to be looked at more consistently anywhere, it's going to be in the red zone because we've seen him as that red zone threat, and because the Cardinals didn't really have that consistent red zone threat option. And like once you find that person, you find him and you're going to keep going to him. And I think that's what's going to happen with Kyler Murray. I think both of their defenses, Falcons and uh, Cardinals, aren't like the strongest, so they definitely have offenses on the field for a long time. So I think the amount of targets that Hopkins will get will still be pretty good for this year. They'll probably focus on their defense next year or something, but it's still going to be a lot of the offense on the field.
Yeah, both of these receivers, like you said, make a great point that they're in great offenses with bad defenses, so they're going to constantly be involved in the game plan no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree. I think if I had to bet money on it, I'd probably say Julio has more yards, but Hopkins has more touchdowns. I
Yeah,
just don't know exactly how much Hopkins is going to be involved just because of the change of scenery. I know he's going to be involved a lot, but I don't know if it's going to be as much as somebody like Julio Jones. That's the only problem. But like you said, the red zone, I think he's definitely going to own that area for the Cardinals, though.
yeah, and I mean you've said it all. There's just nothing I can disagree with there.
Number 5, you have Tyreek Hill. And when you have Patrick Mahomes number one option, I mean, you got to be excited. He, of course, Hill and Mahomes suffered injuries last season, but Tyreek Hill was wide receiver 3 in 2018. So, he definitely is an upper tier option. And, man, like I said, him being Mahomes' number one target, he's got this breakaway speed. And not only that, but he also is targeted heavily. You have guys who are big play threats, but most of the time they're not guys that are wide receiver ones necessarily. You got these Deshaun Jacksons and these people that can just change a game like Will Fuller, but they don't get the consistent amount of targets like Tyreek Hill does. That's why he's so unique, because he's got the big playability as well as the volume. He had at least 5 targets in every game over the last 2 seasons except for one. So, I mean, that's pretty good for a speedy guy who is very effective with the ball in his hands. What are your thoughts on Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, I think this is me speculating right now with the possible reason why speedsters don't get them in volume is, maybe the quarterbacks, they're like, you can run as far as you want every play, but I'm not going to have the arm strength nor the positioning in the pocket to be able to get you that ball. And if that's their, what is it? That's their main talent, and
Specialty.
they're not going to be able to really branch out from that. But with Tyreek, you get a guy that could catch on the outside and have that yards after the carry ability with that speed and how shifty his feet are. And I think he has had that natural speed. I think he's worked the past 3 seasons to really round himself out more.
Yeah, that's the thing is he's
Yeah.
not just exclusively at speed receiver. They use him in the slot. He's used all over the field, and he's game planned to be the number one option because Andy Reid wants to get the ball to his best weapon, and I think it's a great move. I think more teams should do it, but most teams don't have somebody like Tyreek Hill with that kind of speed and talent.
Yeah, I can't disagree.
And not to mention, like he's just a great route runner too. I mean, you saw in the Super Bowl, he had a good game against one of the best defenses. I mean,
Mhm.
that one interception, the ball was turned behind him, and it wasn't really his fault. But yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill, he's a little bit more boom bust than you would like, but he's still involved, and he can win you a week.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the boom or bust comes from that offense has so many weapons that, like the Cardinals, more different from the Cardinals, I would say. DeAndre Hopkins is a proven, still at a high level wide receiver, being put in with some developing wide receivers. And Tyreek Hill, I mean, he had uh, what's his name,
Sammy Watkins
Sammy
took
Watkins, probably with one of his best years. I
and
don't think
Kelsey there too.
Kelsey. You have more of these weapons that are used um, just as consistently as they use with Tyreek Hill. and a developing speedster as well, and the rookie
Mecole
he
Hardman, yeah.
drafted, yeah, McCole Hardman. So that's just more of a, for me, a bust possibility. He has more of that than DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, he just doesn't quite get the target share as a Hopkins or Jones, and that's really his only flaw.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to number 6. We have Chris Godwin, and he was the wide receiver 2 last season. He had a
Believe
great,
it or not. Yeah.
right? He had a great breakout season. And what's also interesting is Edelman was wide receiver 5 last season, and I see him, being in that role that, Chris Godwin, they just play the same slot role that Tom Brady uses a lot.
Mhm.
And I think between Evans and Godwin, I think Godwin's going to be the number one target, honestly. I think he's going to have more targets. I think he's going to be more safe. And that's why I have him higher. I expect the team to pass a lot, but not quite as much as they did last year because Jameis Winston put them in situations where they always had to come back.
Mhm.
But he's just going to be that security blanket for Brady. And Brady, since he's not very mobile, he just checks the ball down when he's in trouble. And this season, he doesn't have a proven great pass catching running back like James White. So I think that's going to benefit Chris Godwin because since he doesn't have James White and Edelman, I think Chris Godwin's going to be more targeted than Edelman was.
Yeah, and I think something I can add is that James White actually had one of his worst years with Brady last year. I just don't think they used him as much as they have been. And you can see also where that put Edelman, like in fantasy rankings, which you said number 5. So without having that or without using that consistently like he didn't last year, you see why Chris Godwin would be a big player that you want to have. And there's always that debate between Evans and Godwin, who's going to be used the most. I think Tom Brady has the ability to throw deeper more than people would like to think. But again, Mike Evans is a great wide receiver, does more of those 50-50 balls, and you know him as a consistently getting those balls. But someone that, like you said, that's going to be there for Brady in his sweet spot of throwing. That's going to be Godwin. And my only worry would be if Gronk is coming back, is Godwin going to be the security blanket or is it going to be Gronk?
Yeah, I get that. And
Yeah.
like you said, Mike Evans being so good with the 50-50 ball, I think Jameis Winston forced the ball to him sometimes, even when he wasn't open. Evans would sometimes win it, but I don't think Brady's going to force it as much. But he's going to hit him when he's open, though.
Yeah, I just said I mean like 3 times. Let me say it one more time. Brady doesn't get a lot of weapons, so having a guy like Mike Evans, he's suddenly be like, let's build this up because I've never had someone like you. I'm 43 years old. Let's see what I can do.
Yeah, not since Randy Moss, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, not never, but like it's been a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, moving on to Kenny Galladay. We have him as our 7th wide receiver. And he was wide receiver 9 last season, and that was without Matthew Stafford from week 10 on. And from Kenny Galladay, he's improved every single season. He's still fairly young, and it seems like wide receivers are usually in their prime between that like 26, 27 age range. And that's where Kenny Galladay is right now. I think he's entering the prime of his career. It could be a career year for him, but what's really unique about him is he has the big play ability and he's a great red zone threat. I mean, he had so many big plays last season, and he's also looked heavily at in the red zone. So that's the ultimate package right there. All he would need to be complete really is to have the targets share of a Julio Jones or Hopkins, like we keep talking about. But that's where the big money is right there. There's big plays in the red zone with the touchdowns. So he just is a great receiver, and he's got a great number 2 complement. I think Marvin Jones is underrated, and Kenny Galladay is just a developing elite receiver, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the struggles of the Lions is really if a random person was like trying to guess the teammates of different teams, the last people they guess would be the Lions wide receivers, or like the last wide receivers out of everyone else. They'd be like, who are the Lions wide receivers? But while in the background, they've been like, doing just as good as like any top 10 wide receiver. like you said, underrated Marvin Jones, Kenny Galladay. Like they're not household names, but they're still doing the production that wide receiver one should do. More Kenny Galladay, but I think their defense, they're really trying. They've been trying every year to make it better, but it's still just gonna be average at most this year. And that offense is gonna be on the field. I hope Matthew Stafford is healthy like 2 years ago, and that's gonna boost Galladay's season. And it's also a boom or bust season for like all the coaching staff and main
Hmm.
office. It's just gonna be like they'll be trying things, they'll be doing anything to get what they can out of the team, and having a wide receiver proven option. They're like, let's try to get to him more. You don't know, so it just seems like it's gonna be definitely, like you said, a career year for him.
Yeah, and not to mention since they lost Darius Slay, I
Mm-hmm.
the defense isn't. I don't think it got better this year, really.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, with the coaches, needing to keep their jobs, they will probably gonna want to go to their best, weapon
Mm-hmm.
consistently throughout the year and see what he can do for the team.
Yeah.
Especially because he's proven that he can do it. Like I said, the big plays last year, geez, that was impressive. He hit like the Tyreek Hill level of big plays.
Yeah, if the Lions offense could just stay healthy, they have a really good offense set to thrive. It
Yeah,
just depends on health. Yeah.
yeah, you're exactly right. All right, next up we have the aforementioned Mike Evans. He is number 8 for us overall, and we already talked a little bit about him. But like I said, I think that Mike Evans is going to be the number 2 target on the team, and the ball is just not going to be forced to him as much. But I mean, still being in the top 10, it's hard to support two top 10 receivers, but these two are just both so talented, and I think Brady's just going to use these guys.
Yeah, nothing really to add to what we've said. I've already told you what type of wide receiver that he's been in the league, and again, it's hard. It would be hard for me if I had Godwin or Evans to think that like the other one. I just right now I'm debating between where these two receivers will actually have top 10, or whether it would be just one,
Yeah,
because that Buccaneers offense has so many weapons. So for safe options, I don't think either of them is high, but for the potential with how talented they are and how much you think Brady's going to want to use them, that's where these rankings come from. And where
yeah,
I
I
don't
just
see,
think Godwin's more safe.
yeah, where I don't see them changing. I know I'm talking more generically now, yeah. But Mike Evans would definitely still be the wide receiver too because of the type of wide receivers there.
Yeah, I think Mike Evans is a little bit more boom or bust. Like last season, in week 1, it was disappointing. He had 4 points in PPR. Week
Mhm.
3, he had 45. Just exploded. And then week 5, he had 0 points. And in that game where he had 0 points, he played the most snaps out of any game, and he had
Oh,
0 points.
I remember them reporting that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's why I have him lower, just because I don't think he's as safe. But he has the potential to put up 12 touchdowns, really, with Brady, and that could push him into the top 5 potentially.
Yeah.
All right, next up we got Allen Robinson, number 9. And last season he was wide receiver 7, and he had at least 10 targets, which is a lot. He had at least 10 targets in 7 games. He was he was fed quite a lot by Mitchell Trubisky, which smart thing for Mitchell Trubisky, because Allen Robinson is a really good real life wide receiver in his prime. He's been in the league for I think like 6 seasons, and he's still only like 26, 27. He came into the league really young, and I just think he's a great receiver. The only question I have really is if Foles is the starting quarterback, is he going to feed him as much as Trubisky?
See, I'm definitely going yes because one, even if he's not fed as much, he's getting passes that are going to be more accurate, and they'll be more catchable, more. It's just going to be more efficiency. The balls are going to be that he's going to be getting are going to be more efficient for him to use. And uh, Trubisky's not a good quarterback. I think Foles is more proven. I know he's never had like a good start to a season when he's been a starter, but I think that he's definitely winning that job, and I think that when he has a big, consistent person he can throw to, like in that Super Bowl run, Zach Ertz was a proven person that Foles relied on a lot, and you saw throughout that playoff run, Ertz was like getting the ball nonstop. So if there's a chemistry there, I definitely banking that Nick Foles is going to use him more. It's going to be a better relationship, and I think Allen Robinson will be more happy. And he's definitely underrated. I
Yep.
think he was looked at a lot when he first entered. He was a big name on the smaller team with the Jaguars, and then I think he's just like slipped behind the scenes, just like Kenny Galladay right now.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
from a dynasty standpoint, real quick, his contract is up this year. And when he signed this contract with the Bears, that was after he tore his ACL. So he didn't really have his choice of a team really because, like I said, not everybody was gunning for him coming off that torn ACL. But I'm really excited for the future of him since I said he's still right in that prime age after this season if he goes to a team that has a great quarterback on a high-powered offense. I'm really excited for his future if he does that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think something that I'm really high on him because of what I believe Nick Foles will do for him, but something that doesn't put him up even more, being like he's like the number one option on the team. Like, why wouldn't he be higher than the people that mix up? Just because, again, the Bears are so defense heavy. Like, that's their priority. I think ever since they've been created, and uh, the offense doesn't get a lot of snaps, and that's just bring him down for me.
Yeah, if he was in a better situation, then yeah, he'd be higher for me too. So he's not a great. He's not my preferred, top 10 receiver, but I mean, he still is going to get that volume, and he's gonna be a safe receiver, I think.
Yeah, well, actually, you say safe, but I was thinking he's gonna be a risk, or high ceiling, low floor. I don't really know how he's gonna perform unless you have some
Well,
disagree there.
well, last season since he had so many targets in so many games, just
Mhm.
having the volume, if in a PPR league, then you just get that consistent output usually, as long as
Yeah,
Trubisky doesn't have like a terrible game.
yeah. I mean, I guess I can see that he made the most of what he could work with the Harvard QB in two settings. So now that I'm thinking about it, this is what we do. We're discussing things. I can see, yeah, more of a consistency with the high ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, number 10, DJ Moore.
Wait. Hey, should we have a number?
Mm, give me some more of that DJ Moore. He is somebody that I absolutely love. He's a number 10 receiver, but I
11.
have him.
He's number 11.
I think you're wrong. He's number 10.
6, 8, 9. Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay, continue.
Yeah, don't doubt me. I know what I'm doing
Yeah,
here.
sorry.
Well, I personally have DJ Moore 7th because I love me some DJ Moore. But if you look at DJ Moore, he was only in his second season last year, and he was great. Still a young, developing receiver, and I think he looked better after the bye. But after the bye, he was wide receiver 5 in points per game, and that's with Will Greer and Kyle Allen. Like that's terrible. I mean, the quarterbacks were terrible, but he was great. But that's if you take out Week 16 because he was injured at the beginning of the game, so that's not really his fault. But he was 11th in points per game overall if you take out that Week 16 game where he was knocked out right at the beginning, and he only had 4 touchdowns on the year. I mean, that is not a lot for a receiver that gets that much volume. He's due for more touchdowns, and he has a more competent quarterback now with Teddy Bridgewater. If you would have gave him, I was kind of curious about this. I did the math, and if he had 2 more touchdowns, he would have been 6th in points per game this season. So that just showed he was pretty close to being in that top 5, really. But like I said, Bridgewater improves his stock. And McCaffrey, he had tons of touchdowns last year. He had 19 touchdowns, and I think that it's going to come down a little bit because I think they're going to get more through the air to the receivers with Teddy Bridgewater there. And we saw last year with Bridgewater on the Saints, when he was the starter, he fed Michael Thomas a lot. he had like a 30% target share. He went to his best receiver, and he went to the receiver that thrives in the short to intermediate routes, which is where DJ Moore thrives. And that defense, we've talked about it with some of these other players. The defense is terrible. I mean, they lost Kuechly and James Bradbury and all these great pieces on defense. Yes, they went all draft in the defense, but they allowed the second most points last year per game. And when you lose players like that, Luke Kuechly, who's like a Hall of Fame, I think he could potentially be a Hall of Fame linebacker, and you just replace them with rookies, I don't think their defense is going to be great. Plus, Greg Olsen is gone, so that allows for even more targets, and that's why I absolutely love DJ Moore, because if he can just get even 8 touchdowns, 7, 8, I think he could be a top 5 receiver personally.
Okay. Uh, I'll agree. One thing. Wait. One. I'll agree that defense is not going to be good in Carolina. 2. It's just such an unproven offense. I think out of you and me, you're more the gambler when it comes to fantasy, and I like the safer options. I think, who knows? But if I were a gambling man, I can see your point. I think you spit a lot of facts there. It's just I don't see him. It's more I don't see him outshining the people above him than him actually doing bad. Uh, I think intermediate wide receiver. He's definitely gonna draw most of the targets from Teddy Bridgewater. I think Christian McCaffrey's touchdowns go down. It's just this is not gonna be a good team next year, and I know the offense will be on the field more. So I'm saying a lot of counter things. So yes, DJ Moore is going to have a greater year. I will agree with that. Just I don't think it's going to be as great as you think it will be. Because
Well, since he was 11th in points per game, if he had a greater year, then he'd be a top 10 receiver, right?
Yeah, but I think if Kenny Golladay has a healthy Matthew Stafford, he outshines him. Allen Robinson, I think, is going to surprise people. I think Mike Evans could fall, but then that would put DJ Moore at like 8, 9. But
Well,
right? Let's you have something to say.
well, there's also been a trend with receivers. They usually this recently it's been the second year, but a lot of times they say receivers in the third year, that's when they really break out and come to their own. And this will be his third season. Not to mention he was a first round pick. So he was a very talented receiver coming out of college. And for him to put up the numbers he did as a sophomore in the NFL, I just think that proves that he's a great talent. I don't think he's quite on this level, but I think he's close, honestly. It might be a little bold, but it's like when DeAndre Hopkins, when he had terrible quarterbacks, he was still a great wide receiver, and DJ Moore did it with terrible quarterbacks, Kyle Allen and Will Greer. And I think if you get him a better, quarterback, it's just going to help him even more get put up points.
Yeah, he's definitely a top, obviously top 12 wide receiver. I think top 10. I'll give you top 10. I think we're more just debating where he is in those 10 than how it is. And for fantasy options, I will concede and say that he's going to be a very good option. But it's just all these wide receivers are very close to each other for me. Yeah.
Yeah, but personally, I think talking about these guys like Galladay and Evans and Robinson, I think that DJ Moore is going to catch more passes than these guys personally. I think he's going to catch more passes, so he's more valuable in PPR. But I think he could be lowered a bit in standard leagues because I know Evans, Galladay, and Robinson, these 3 guys, essentially, they just more consistent with the touchdowns. But like I said, I think DJ Moore is going to get more this season.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think Evans could definitely drop. But yeah, I'll agree
He's
with
just not
that.
as proven as these guys right above him. But I'm banking on him breaking out and having even a better season than he did last season.
I truly hope you're right. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
This was our first like real disagreement.
Yeah, it was.
Probably our biggest one.
Hmm.
All right. Well, anyways, next up we got Amari Cooper. He is our 11th receiver, and I'm at 13th, and it's because he's just man. This man is so talented, right? But his consistency is it's never good. And I don't know. He may have an excuse this season, right? But first, before I get there, he was a wide receiver 4 in weeks 1 through 7. It was looking like, oh wow, Mark Cooper's breaking out of that boomer bust kind of role that he's been placed in fantasy, and now he's going to be a consistent great receiver. And then from that point on, weeks 8 through 16, he was a wide receiver 34, which isn't even a top, it's not even a wide receiver 1 or 2 in fantasy, and barely in that wide receiver 3 edge. And he did have that leg injury. It's like, how much of that was due to the leg injury? I think it partly was due to that, why his production dropped off. But still, his profile has always been an inconsistent guy. But this season was the closest we saw to him being consistent. And if it is the reason why he dropped off this season towards the end, if it was just a leg injury, and I mean, he has a chance to prove himself as a consistent option, but I'm just not ready to bank on that. But I'm still confident in that he'll finish as a strong receiver this season.
Yeah, I I'm not. I would actually probably draft DJ Moore over Amari Cooper. Um, I think. I mean, that's what we talked about, but it's also due to there's so many targets on the Dallas offense now.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it could help him that you could say it's the leg injury. You could say that, they figured out Amari Cooper and they could have like a hidden safety that was there that prevented some targets. Or I forget the term for that. But there definitely could have been ways to lock him down. But those defenses are going to be working, and you'll be working on CeeDee Lamb, Gallup, Amari Cooper. No one's going to be really like double coveraging anybody. And I think, maybe that could help Amari's consistency, but it, it's hard. It's hard to believe because also the other wide receivers will be open too. So
Yeah, I just think that the fact that you have a CeeDee Lamb caliber player instead of a Randall Cobb who is, in the twilight of his career, that's just going to draw a few more targets away from Amari Cooper. And also, they had Jason Witten out there. He's a great tight end. He's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, I would say. And last season, he just wasn't good. He was all right because Dak targeted him. He was in a great offense, but he wasn't nearly as good as he was in the past. And I personally think that Blake Jarwin, who they have now, I think he's going to be better than a whatever 37 something old Jason Witten. I personally think that Blake Jarwin's a good tight end, so I think he's going to draw maybe more targets than Witten. But I just don't think Witten is a huge him. I mean, Witten leaving, I don't think that's a big benefit for Amari Cooper necessarily. If some people might argue.
yeah, and I mean, I think something else that benefits that's different is that defense is gonna be horrible. So
Yeah, that could
that's
help him. Dak Prescott had a career year last year. I don't know if he can replicate it, but with the way the defense is looking right now, he very well could.
yeah,
So that's going to keep Amari Cooper up as a at least top 15 receiver at minimum.
yeah, he'll be a viable top 15.
Yes. All right. Well, our last receiver here we're talking about, number 12, we have Juju Smith and
Schuster.
Juju Smith-Schuster. That's
Hmm.
correct.
Hmm.
And he was a top 10 receiver in 2018. That was opposite of Antonio Brown, though. And last year he was being drafted really high, like as a top 8 wide receiver. Of course, Big Ben was healthy at that time. But if we completely threw out 2019, he had these terrible quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph and Hodges. I thought they're just terrible. We've talked about it
Duck.
before.
Hmm.
Duck Hodges. But I believe that he'll bounce back as a top 12 receiver because I think he's just a very talented wide receiver. He's actually only 23 years old. So I think this is his 4th season he's going into. But the only real question, barring injury to him or Big Ben, is can he flourish as the number one receiver on the team, not benefiting from Antonio Brown taking away coverage? I think he can, personally, because I just think he's a great receiver, like I said. But what do you think about that question?
I actually have a lot to say on Juju. I was reading a little more about him today, and they had some interviews with the Steelers coaching staff, and they're talking about Chase Claypool and how they think he'll affect it. And what their plan is to put Juju back on the inside where he played wide receiver two with Antonio Brown.
Nice.
And I think he'll be the wide receiver one there, kind of like a Michael Thomas slot wide receiver one. And that's gonna benefit him tremendously. Um,
Oh yeah.
I think that Big Ben, even if his elbow isn't right, he's still gonna have the intermediate throw to Juju, and I think he's gonna have a big year with Big Ben healthy. And I think he will do as good as we thought he was gonna do last year, even with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Juju Smith. It's so hard to rank him because before this season, like I said, if we would have thrown 2019 out, like I would have him in my maybe top eight, honestly, because I think he's just going to get a lot of volume on
Mhm.
an offense that historically just passed a lot. And I think Big Ben's a great quarterback, really. So it's just difficult, though, because we saw last year how, like with DeAndre Hopkins, when he had terrible quarterbacks, he was still, he was still a great receiver. But Juju Smith, it just throws, a wrench in there now after seeing him without a great quarterback. That's the only thing. If it wasn't for last season seeing that down year, like I would have him much higher.
Yeah, and I think we have him high for where how the years have been. And what I've been thinking is that Juju was thought of as like a top five pick. And you're thinking, well, he could do that production that he could have as a top five pick this year. But you're thinking,
Top
mm,
five receiver.
yeah, top five receiver. Then you have to think he's a wide receiver that is now on a surprisingly, in like half a year, amazing defense.
Yeah.
So something that's like not really thought about. You think about the offense, think about the defense. He could be amazing when the offense is on the field. But I think rating where he is now, I think that reflects how much volume is going to be decreased for a number one wide receiver.
Yeah, I can agree with that because going into last year, the Steelers weren't known to have that defense that they had in 2019 really because I mean they added Minka Fitzpatrick and that totally turned the defense around and it seems like they focused their identity really just on the defense and before it was just on the offense through the air and I don't know if they'll transition back, to having their identity through the offense. I think it's just going to be something in the middle.
Yeah, I mean they're retaining T.J. Watt, retaining Minka, retaining. They have some great interior linebackers that I'm forgetting the names of right now. And but they have the core, the interior core at least. The cornerbacks weren't specifically the best, but they have a great defense, steel curtain, you could say, to work around. And I think, yeah, Juju's got great production, just limited volume.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, if he was on like the Falcons or the Panthers, one of these teams with a terrible defense, yeah, there would definitely people be more excited about him.
Yeah.
All right, that does it for the episode. Thank you all for joining us and supporting us. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FFFanatics11, and you can subscribe to us on YouTube at just FFFanatics. Maybe you're watching us right now on it. You should hit the subscribe button and like if you would, please, if you liked it. And thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you. And look for a part two to this video coming later this week.
That's right.